My name is Marcus Reyes, and for 6 years, I worked on the 14th floor of the Halloran Building in downtown Chicago. Not the 13th floor, There is no 13th floor in the Halloran Building. The elevator panel goes straight from 12 to 14. I noticed it my very first week, the way you notice a missing stair in the dark, a small wrongness your body catches before your mind does. I asked about it once. My supervisor laughed and said it was superstition, that half the old buildings downtown did the same thing, skipped the unlucky number to keep tenants happy. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? I want you to understand something before I go any further. I am not a person who believes in ghosts. I do payroll audits for a mid-sized logistics firm. I reconcile numbers for a living. My whole job is proving that reality adds up, that nothing is missing, that every dollar can be accounted for. So when I tell you what happened to me on the night of March the 4th, I need you to know that I fought against believing it for weeks afterward. I still fight it some nights, but the numbers didn't add up that night, and I have never found a way to make them add up since. If you're the kind of person who likes stories that sit with you long after the video ends, stories that don't explain themselves away, go ahead and subscribe to Eerie Atmos X now, because what happened to me on that missing 13th floor still doesn't fully make sense, and I don't think it ever will. It started as an ordinary late night, quarter end, the kind of night where the office empties out by 7 and you're the only one left. The hum of the server room, the only company you have. I remember the smell of burnt coffee from the pot nobody had cleaned. I remember the particular quality of silence that settles into an office tower after hours. Not true silence, but a held breath, air conditioning ticking through vents, the distant groan of the building settling into the cold. I finished around 11, grabbed my coat, walked to the elevator bank at the end of the hall, badge already in hand for the lobby turnstile. I pressed the call button and waited, watching the little numbers count down. 20, 19. The elevator was slow that night, slower than usual, and I remember checking my phone twice. More out of habit than impatience. When the doors opened, I stepped in without looking up. I pressed the button for the lobby. The doors closed, and the elevator went the wrong direction. I felt it before I understood it. That particular drop in your stomach when a floor doesn't match the motion. I looked up at the panel. The number lit up wasn't going down toward 1. It was climbing, 14, and then, impossibly, 13. I want to be precise about what I felt in that moment, because precision is the only thing I have left to offer you. It wasn't fear yet. It was confusion, sharp and clean, the kind that makes you check a number twice because your brain refuses the first read. There's no 13. There has never been a 13. I had ridden this elevator 4 times a day for 6 years, and the button for 13 did not exist on the panel, had never existed. And yet the little lit numeral above the door said 13, as plainly as anything I have ever seen. The elevator slowed, stopped, the doors opened. I did not see a maintenance closet. I did not see drywall, an exposed pipe, the kind of half-finished space you'd expect behind a floor that officially doesn't exist. I saw an office, a full, lit, furnished office, and it was not the office I worked in. The carpet was a shade of green I hadn't seen outside of old photographs, dense and slightly worn in paths between the desks. The desks themselves were heavy steel things, the kind with rounded corners and a weight to them that modern furniture doesn't have anymore. Typewriters sat on several of them, rotary phones. A bank of filing cabinets ran the length of the far wall, olive drab, the kind you'd find in a government surplus catalog from decades ago. Overhead, the lighting was warm and yellow. Nothing like the cold fluorescent tubes above my own desk 1 floor up. And there were people, 12, maybe 15 of them, dressed for a decade that had ended long before I was born. Men in wide ties and suspenders, a woman in a belted dress typing at a furious pace. Another man standing at a filing cabinet with his back to me, a phone cradled against his shoulder as though mid-conversation. None of them looked at me. None of them looked at the open elevator doors at all, and none of them made a single sound. I could see the woman's fingers moving across the typewriter keys. Fast, practiced, the kind of motion that should have filled the space with a rhythmic clatter. Nothing. I could see the man on the phone, his mouth shaping words, his shoulders shifting with the rhythm of speech. Nothing. It was like watching television with the volume all the way down. Except the picture was 3 feet away, and I could have reached out and touched it. I did not step out of the elevator. Some instinct, deeper than reasoning, kept my feet planted exactly where they were. I stood in the open doorway of that elevator and stared at an entire functioning office from a different era, operating in absolute silence, on a floor that should not exist between floors 12 and 14 of a building I had worked in for 6 years. The doors began to close. I don't know why I didn't stop them. I've asked myself that question more times than I can count. Some part of me in that first frozen moment was relieved to see them closing, relieved to be sealed back into the ordinary hum of an elevator shaft. The last thing I saw, right before the gap narrowed to nothing, was the man at the filing cabinet finally turning his head toward me. His face was placid, almost polite, like a man who'd simply noticed a draft. The elevator resumed its descent as if nothing unusual had happened, dropping smoothly through 12, through 11, all the way to the lobby. The doors opened onto the marble floor, the night security guard behind his desk, the ordinary fluorescent hum of a normal Tuesday night. I stood there for a long moment before I made myself walk out. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch with every light in my apartment on, turning the image over and over, trying to build an explanation my brain would accept. A hallucination brought on by exhaustion and too much bad coffee. A trick of reflection, some optical illusion caused by the elevator's interior lighting. I am, as I said, a numbers person. I need things to reconcile, and nothing about what I'd seen reconciled with anything I understood about that building. The next morning, I did what anyone in my position would do. I went to building management. The office was on the 2nd floor, a cramped little suite behind the leasing department, staffed by a woman named Carol who had clearly worked in that building longer than I had been alive. I asked her, as casually as I could manage, why the elevator skipped the 13th floor. She didn't even look up from her monitor. Superstition, she said. Lots of old buildings do it. Some of the original blueprints from the 1950s still list a 13th floor, back before the developer changed the numbering to make tenants more comfortable. But structurally, she said, there is no 13th floor. The building goes straight from 12 to 14. Always has, as far as any current record shows. I asked her if I could see the blueprints. She said they were probably in deep storage somewhere, and even if she found them, why would I want to look at old floor plans? I didn't have a good answer for her. Not one I was willing to say out loud. That should have been the end of it. A strange, sleepless night, a corporate non-answer, a story I could have quietly filed away and never mentioned to anyone. And for about 2 weeks, that's exactly what I did. I went back to my normal routine. I avoided taking the elevator alone after dark telling myself it was just a precaution, nothing more. I told myself the mind plays tricks on tired people, that the eye fills in details the brain wants to see. I did mention it once, carefully, to a coworker named Diane who'd been at the firm almost as long as Carol had been in building management. We were waiting for coffee to brew in the break room, and I asked her, as lightly as I could manage, if she'd ever noticed anything strange about the elevator skipping the 13th floor. She went quiet in a way that told me more than anything she said afterward. She said her uncle had worked in the building decades ago, back when it still housed insurance firms instead of logistics companies and law offices, and that he used to tell a story about a floor that wasn't on any map, a floor you only found if the elevator felt like showing it to you. She said it the way people talk about things they've decided not to believe anymore, flat and quick, eager to change the subject. When I pressed her for details, she said her uncle passed away before she was old enough to ask the questions that mattered, and that whatever he knew, he'd taken with him. She asked me, not unkindly, to please not bring it up again. I never did, but I noticed after that conversation that Diane started taking the stairs. I also noticed something else in the weeks that followed, something small enough that I nearly convinced myself it meant nothing. The overnight security guard, an older man named Ellis who'd worked the desk longer than anyone else in the building, started watching me a little too closely whenever I left late. Not suspicious exactly, careful, the way you watch someone standing too close to the edge of a platform. One night as I signed out, he asked me, almost offhand, whether I'd been taking the elevator up past midnight lately. I said no, which wasn't entirely true. He nodded slowly and told me that in 22 years on that desk, he'd learned to trust the ones who avoided that elevator after dark more than the ones who didn't. He didn't explain what he meant by that, and I didn't ask him to. Some questions, I was learning, were better left exactly where you found them. Then I found the ledger dot had happened by accident, the way most discoveries in an accounting job do. I was pulling old employment records for an unrelated compliance audit, digging through a digitized archive of personnel files that went back further than I expected, all the way to the building's earliest tenants in the 1950s, and there, buried in a scanned folder labeled simply Halloran Building Historical, I found a payroll ledger, handwritten, careful, looping cursive, the kind taught in schools that don't exist anymore. The ledger listed employees of an insurance underwriting firm that had occupied, according to the header at the top of each page, the 13th floor of the Halloran Building. I sat with that for a long moment, because officially, structurally, according to every piece of paperwork Carol in building management could point me to, that floor had never existed. I scrolled through the names slowly, my throat tightening with every line, and near the bottom of the third page, I found a name that made the room feel suddenly very cold. Walter Reyes, my grandfather's name. I want to be careful here, because I know how this sounds, and I promised you I would be precise. My grandfather did work in downtown Chicago in the 1950s. My family always said he worked in insurance. He died before I was born, and the details of his working life were never something anyone discussed much. A quiet, closed subject, the way certain family histories often are. I had never once, in 29 years, connected him to the building where I now spent my working days. According to that ledger, Walter Reyes had been employed on the 13th floor of the Halloran Building from 1951 until an entry in late 1957, where his name simply stopped appearing. No termination note, no transfer record. The entry above his final listed paycheck simply read, in the same careful cursive as everything else, missing floor 13. 2 words. No explanation. No follow-up entry anywhere in the surrounding pages. I didn't tell anyone at work what I'd found. I didn't tell my mother, not yet. Not until I understood more of it myself. Instead, I did something I'm still not entirely sure I can defend as a rational decision. I went back to that elevator alone after hours, and I pressed and held the button for 12 until the doors opened. Onto a hallway I didn't recognize. The elevator had taken me to 13 again, without me asking it to. This time I stepped out. The hallway smelled of old paper and machine oil, a scent so specific and unfamiliar that it seemed to bypass memory entirely and lodge directly in my nervous system. The green carpet muffled my footsteps almost completely. Ahead of me, through a pair of frosted glass doors with gold lettering that read Halloran Mutual Assurance, I could see the same office I'd glimpsed weeks before, the same rows of desks, the same warm yellow light. The silence here was different from the silence of an empty office at night. It had a texture to it, a pressure, like the moment before a held breath finally breaks. I pushed open the frosted glass door. The desks were empty this time. No typing woman, no man at the filing cabinet, no one at all. Just rows of vacant chairs pushed neatly beneath heavy steel desks. Typewriters silent, telephones resting undisturbed in their cradles. And yet the room did not feel unoccupied. It felt like a held breath, like the moment right before someone steps back into frame. I walked between the desks, reading the little brass nameplates fixed to each one. Most were names I didn't recognize, names lost to whatever decade this floor was frozen in. And then, 3 rows in, beside a window that looked out onto a city skyline that did not match the modern Chicago skyline I knew, I found a desk with a nameplate that read W. Reyes. The chair behind it was pulled out slightly, as though someone had just stood up from it before I let myself sit. I made myself walk the rest of the room first, the way you check every door in a house before admitting you're afraid of what's behind one of them. Nearly every desk had a nameplate, and nearly every nameplate had a matching ledger tucked beneath the typewriter or resting open beside the phone. I flipped through a few of them, my hands moving faster than my judgment. Most entries were mundane, hours logged, small notations about claims processed and letters sent. But scattered among the mundane entries, every few pages the same 2 words kept surfacing in that same careful cursive. Missing floor 13. Different names each time. A Dorothy Holley, missing in 1954. A Frank Kowalski, missing in 1956. No explanation ever followed those words. No note of resignation or death or relocation, just the phrase itself, dropped into the record like a period at the end of a sentence nobody wanted to finish. I counted 6 names before I made myself stop counting, because the 7th ledger I opened belonged to the desk with the pulled-out chair, and I already knew, before I looked down at the page, whose name I was going to find written last. On the desk sat an open ledger, identical in style to the digitized one I'd found in the archive. The handwriting matched, and the final entry dated in a format I didn't fully understand. Read a name I did understand perfectly. Marcus Reyes, pending. I don't know how long. I stood there staring at my own name, written in ink that had clearly dried decades before I was born. Long enough that when the temperature in the room dropped, sudden and sharp, like a door opening onto winter, I nearly didn't notice at first that the rotary phone on the desk beside me began to ring, not loudly, not urgently. A single, polite ring, then silence. Then another ring, patient, almost courteous, the way an old friend might call and wait as long as it takes for you to pick up. I did not pick it up. I backed away from that desk so fast I knocked over a chair, and the sound of it hitting the green carpet, dull and muffled, was the loudest thing I had heard on that entire floor. I turned and ran for the frosted glass doors, and behind me I heard the office come alive. Not with footsteps, not with voices, with sound all at once, typewriters clattering, phones ringing in overlapping bursts, a dozen quiet conversations rising into a full working office. The way a radio bursts to life the instant you turn the volume knob from 0. I didn't look back to see who was making those sounds. The elevator doors were already open when I reached them, waiting as though they'd known I would need them. I threw myself inside and slammed the button for the lobby so hard my thumb ached the next morning. The doors closed on an office in full, deafening motion, every desk occupied, every chair filled, though I could not, in the half-second I had, make myself look closely enough to see by whom the elevator dropped. 12, 11, 10. My phone, which I hadn't touched since stepping onto that floor, buzzed in my pocket. 14 missed calls. 3 text messages from my mother, each one more worried than the last, asking why I wasn't answering, asking if I was okay, asking in the final message why I hadn't come home the night before. I had been on that floor for what felt like 15 minutes, according to my phone. According to the lobby security logs I checked the next day with a shaking, unconvincing excuse about a lost badge, I had been gone for 11 hours. If you've made it this far, I want you to sit with that number for a second, the way I've had to sit with it every day since. 11 hours folded into 15 minutes. A missing 13th floor that isn't missing at all, not really, just waiting, patient as that ringing phone for the moment someone stops long enough to answer it. I quit my job at that firm 4 months later. I told my supervisor it was for a better opportunity, which wasn't entirely a lie, since staying employed and staying sane had become, by then, 2 separate and competing goals. I have not set foot in the Halloran building since the day I cleared out my desk, and I have gone out of my way more than once to walk 3 extra blocks rather than pass beneath its shadow on my way to anywhere else downtown. I never told my mother about the ledger, or about the name written in ink beside mine. I couldn't find a way to say it that didn't sound like the kind of thing that gets a person quietly, gently encouraged to see someone. Maybe I should have said something anyway. Maybe some doors, once you know they're there, deserve to be spoken about out loud, if only so someone else remembers the shape of them after you're gone. I did go back once more on my last day at the firm, though I never told anyone that either. I stood at the elevator bank with my badge already deactivated, my desk already cleared, and I pressed the button for 12 out of some compulsion I still can't fully explain. The doors opened, as they always had before, onto the ordinary 14th floor lobby, fluorescent lights humming, carpet, a flat, forgettable gray. No green carpet, no frosted glass doors, no warm yellow light spilling out from somewhere it shouldn't. Just an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. The copier running down the hall, someone's phone ringing at a normal, unremarkable volume. Part of me was relieved. Part of me, and I'm not proud of this, felt something closer to disappointment. The particular ache of a door closing before you've decided whether you wanted to walk through it. I told myself the floor was done with me. I told myself that whatever had been waiting on the other side of that ledger entry had lost interest, or run out of patience, or simply moved on to someone else's name in someone else's careful cursive. I believed that more or less for almost a year. Here's what I keep circling back to on the nights I can't sleep. My grandfather's entry didn't say fired. It didn't say deceased, didn't say transferred, didn't say retired. It said missing. 2 words in careful cursive on a floor that officially does not exist. And beside my own name in the same hand, in ink that predates my birth by decades, there was only 1 word left to fill in. I think about what would happen if I go back. I think about the chair, pulled out just slightly, as though whoever last sat in it meant to return any moment. I think about the phone and how patiently it rang, the way something rings when it already knows you're going to answer eventually, whether tonight or some other night, whether this year or some year further down the line than you'd like to imagine. What would you have done? Standing in that hallway, staring at your own name written in a stranger's careful hand, decades before you were born. Would you have closed that ledger and walked away for good the way I tried to? Or would you have stayed just long enough to see what came next? If this story kept you looking over your shoulder even a little, share it with someone who likes the kind of horror that doesn't need a monster to leave a mark. The quiet kind, the kind that waits behind an ordinary elevator door in an ordinary building. Patient as ink drying on a page. 3 nights ago, my phone rang at 1:13 in the morning. Unknown number. No caller ID, no area code I recognized. I let it ring 4 times before it stopped on its own. When I checked the call log the next morning, it wasn't there. No missed call, no unknown number, nothing at all. As if the ring itself had happened somewhere just outside the reach of the log. Somewhere adjacent to the version of the night I was actually living in. I haven't answered a call from an unknown number since. I don't think I will, not for a long time. But some nights right around 1 in the morning, I find myself standing very still in my apartment, listening for a second ring that hasn't come yet, and wondering exactly how long patient things are willing to wait.